how many days sober you've had is not a measure of your recovery. It's a measure of your abstinence.
Yes.
And when you're abstinent, if you don't do other work for your recovery, you're going to be a miserable, sick, upset, depressed, angry human being.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. D. Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships podcast. We're going deep.
Yes. He's a D and I'm Sophie, in case you're wondering.
Oh, I am a D.
And I'm...
Oh my God, that's the first time I haven't done that?
Yeah.
There's a first time for everything. Yeah, this is the end of recovery month. Before you came on to this, we were having a different conversation. I think I kind of lost myself in there.
But it's all good. You can forget your name and you can forget not to do a perfect intro every time.
All good.
So today we're going to be going deep with a D because it's recovery month. It's the last episode where we always go deep, the last episode of the month. And this recovery month, you know, the reason we're even talking about recovery is because of a D's experiences going through recovery and now helping thousands of people worldwide with their recovery, which is very personal to each person. And I think that that's the most inspiring part to what you do is that each person is unique and each person has their own story and their own relationship to whatever it is that they're addicted to. So I feel that the thing that makes you so different and the way that I've observed you helping all of these people around the world with their quote addictions, the things that their impulses, the substances or not, people, gambling, drugs, whatever it is, that they are gravitating towards and feel like they are out of control with. What I've watched you do over the last decade when you help people is you help them find the root cause of what it is that's making them want to disappear, to act out, to grab things, to like the impulse, whatever it is for that particular person.
Right.
There's not a there's not a one size fits all for anyone in that to heal. And what I love is that you help them. It's just like a byproduct that they stop using the thing because that's not where you go in right away. You go in right away to like, let's heal the thing that's making you want to do that to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what I remind them is that it's about a different thing.
Yeah.
Because so many of them come in for the problem. They say, I'm drinking too much, or I'm smoking too much weed, or I'm taking too many pills. You know, this kid I'm working with right now, nothing is going to be better until, and they kind of tell you what they have to stop doing. And I go, why are you doing it? And they go, well, because I do it. And I go, okay, but that's not how it started.
Exactly.
And I help them remember that there was actually a reason why they started, which helps at least frame the experience they're going through, right? Because we're most scared of the things we don't understand. And when you do things that you don't understand, it's scary as shit.
Yeah.
Because you're like, why am I waking up every morning doing these things? I don't want to do them. My parents are yelling at me. I get fired from work. My wife leaves me. My kids don't want to talk to me. I don't want to do this thing. I want to stop drinking. Why can't I stop drinking? Because it's not about the drinking. So I think the first thing I do is I help remind people it was never about the drinking in the first place. The drinking is just the thing you learn to do. It's like, unless your life is purposeful in your job, if you have a job, you don't go to work for the job.
Right.
You go to work for the money that the job pays you so you can have the life you want. Like, we forget sometimes the motivation behind the things that we do. And with something like addiction, we've been fed this story, which is the addiction is a standalone thing by itself. Addicts are different than other people. They're not fucking different than other people. They're just people who found a medication that worked for them a long time ago. You can maybe call the original problem they had the condition if you really want to. And it worked. And it worked really, really well. It worked so well that nobody knew for a really long time that it was a problem. And then it worked so well, they relied on it all the time. And when they started relying on it all the time and they couldn't rely on other things anymore, then other people start noticing.
And that's what you always said, that like was the difference between someone being like, someone could use the same amount as someone else, but it's when it starts affecting your life in a negative way.
100%.
So if you start being late to work, all the time, you're getting in trouble, or you're falling asleep on the job or in the car, whatever it is. If there's something
or your wife or husband says, hey, you need to drink less because you said some stupid shit at dinner the other week.
Right. When that starts adding up and the more negatives keep adding up.
That's what we call addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so, it's funny because people fight. I mean, you know this because I talk to you about it every time people talk shit to me online or wherever. But people keep getting so freaked out by this, right? We put out a post on Instagram just the other day that said, do you want to read it?
It's time to stop marking recovery by saying how many days in a row we've been sober.
Yeah. And, look, I mean, we post a thing on Instagram pretty much every day, but that one got like 70 comments in less than an hour. I don't get 70 comments in less than an hour.
Yeah.
I don't know how many comments it's up to now, but it really resonated. And to be perfectly honest, I was surprised that it resonated the way it did because normally I catch shit for that.
Right.
And people question it. People wrote you questioning it.
People wrote me questioning it. And actually, she stuck to it and had a beautiful, even this morning, she was like, thank you so much. And just, it ended really well. And I said, thank you for going there with me. Like she had an issue with
abstinence not being the goal.
Yeah. She said when early on, she didn't say triggering, but she was like, this seems insensitive to someone early on in the process because that's all you have. And I was like, well, let's dig a little deeper into that. That's the problem. That's all you have. The
problem is that's all you have.
Is a number and a chip.
So I always catch a lot of flack for it. This was surprising to me. And the reason I keep with a lot of people and try to get them to the other side is they say things like that to me, like initially all you have is your days. And I go, the only reason that the only thing you have is your days, that's the only thing somebody told you you're supposed to measure this by.
That's what you're supposed to focus on.
They told you if you stop, if you quit, everything will get better. And what I'm saying is it doesn't even have to start there. It could. This is the thing that everybody needs to get out of this. If counting days is working for you, keep doing it. Keep moving on.
Right.
I'm not offering a new solution for people for whom the current solution is working. Keep working on. The problem is we live in a world right now where like 90% of people who need help are not doing anything about it. And you can hate on them. You can say they're unmotivated. You can say that they're in denial.
Lazy.
You can use all the crazy terms that make you feel better about why they're not getting help.
Something's not working. There's something not working in the system.
And more people are dying every year. So while you sit on your high horse and decide, well, they're just not serious enough. People literally in meetings sometimes say to people, get out there and keep using until you're serious enough about quitting.
Whoa.
It's fucking insanity.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about my story and like me getting kicked out of my treatment. But the thing that I'm saying is this. How many days sober you've had is not a measure of your recovery. It's a measure of your abstinence.
Yes.
And when you're abstinent, if you don't do other work for your recovery, you're going to be a miserable, sick, upset, depressed, angry human being.
Yeah.
And so stop measuring how well you're doing by this thing that doesn't actually dictate how well you're doing. Is it a requirement for some people to have a good life to not be drinking and using? Absolutely. It's just that the not drinking and using is not the indicator that they're having a good life.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, again, we can use so many analogies for this, right? But it's like, how many people, like you ask people, how long have you been married?
Yeah.
That's some measure, like you haven't divorced.
Sure.
Great. That doesn't tell me if you're happy in your marriage.
Right.
And what I'm saying to people is let's stop measuring things by how long we can fucking bear them.
Yeah.
And instead say to somebody, how happy are you?
Yeah.
How well is your recovery going? And then somebody can give you the following answer. You know what? It's going really well. I'm in a relationship. I found a new job. I'm doing so much better than before, but I drank last weekend and it's making me really upset. All right. Now we get to have a conversation. This guy on LinkedIn, to prove his point about how annoyed he was at what I was saying, said, how does this play in a meeting? I stand up and I say, my name is whatever his name was. It's actually public, so I can say this. My name is Paul, I think was his name. And I have this many days of sobriety, and this is my generalized anxiety score, and this was my health score. And he kind of started naming off all these standard instruments. And he was trying to make a joke. And I said, you know what, buddy? In the interest of joking, I would actually hope that people would get up and give me a much more complete picture of how their life is going other than their day sober. So you might not want to use the exact instrument that you use to measure it with, but how nice would it be, by the way, for life in general, if when you met somebody, like we try to do on this podcast all the time, and they ask you, how are things going? They'd say, they're going pretty well. I'm blessed and my life is going really well, but I'm really stressed this week. And my relationship with my wife is, we're having a tough time. Like if people started speaking like that more regularly, we'd have a much more
Which
realistic.
is what we're trying to, even in a broader sense, away from recovery. That's what we try and share on our podcast here. If you haven't listened to our podcast yet, maybe this is your first time listening. If you're on our Instagram tuning in live right now, radical transparency is what we try and do all the time, is share from a place of not actually giving a shit what anyone else thinks about it, but instead just telling the truth because it's what's helped us heal from deep traumas and hurts and pain.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't care what other people say. I care a lot about what other people think and say.
But you say it anyway. That's what I meant.
What I realized was that I still just have to fucking say it.
Sure. Oh, yeah. No, I'm definitely thinking people are not going to like this as I share a Diet Coke on my story, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the truth. And it might help someone else who's going through an eating disorder or deep, whatever it is, trauma. Like, if by sharing our story in any capacity can help one person not feel ashamed or not feel, alone.
Or not feeling like they're just pretending all the time.
Yeah.
That's my thing about recovery is there are people with a year who are like celebrating their cake and
miserable,
which is like their birthday in AA, and they hate their life.
Yeah.
But the message they got from outside is you got a year. This is a miracle and it's a blessing. And what I'm saying is, look, take a step back. Like, how's your life going? How's your recovery going? Stop using that one number as your indicator.
Yeah.
And so I haven't had that many positive comments about this particular view of what I do in a long time, which to me suggests that things are changing. Because as you pointed out.
Yeah, that's so nice that you posted it. But that felt really good yesterday to post that.
I mean, I was shocked.
Did you get any negative comments?
I didn't get negative comments. I got people saying they don't understand it or why am I saying it, which I love, by the way. I welcome it. Somebody on Facebook, because I get a lot of shit on Facebook because we put ads on Facebook and people will literally call me like a murderous scam artist who's somebody the other day was like, well, you must be a really wealthy doctor, taking advantage of addicts. And I'm like, first of all, you have no idea what's going on with my life. Yeah. Literally make like $12,000 a year that I put all back into this business, make $0 doing this and have for like 7 years.
Helping tirelessly.
And have helped thousands of people in the interim. And you know what? Like, if you're good with the status quo where more and more people are dying every year, all the more power to you. Keep doing your shit. I'm not okay with it and I'll move forward. So that's what I'm used to getting.
Yeah.
And to get a positive response, I was like, oh my God, something's changing.
Yeah.
Or at least like the message that there's another way to think about it is coming up. Because for people, here's what got me the most. And that was some people who shared comments said, I'm struggling right now. And thank you for saying this. Because when I measure my success by how many days abstinence I've had, I'm failing. And I don't want to like keep measuring my success by that. Because if that's the only true measure, then I keep fucking up. And my message is really more for those people because I was fucking up. We were going to talk about my story and like, I don't know how many times I tried to quit, but I think like concerted efforts where I said, I'm going to try to stop is like 7 to 9. Only 2 or 3 of them with actual help, but like 7 to 9 different times. And I said, you know what? I'm going to quit. And that's not like I wake up in the morning and I'm done. I'm saying like I put effort into quitting and none of them worked. Sometimes the longest that ever lasted, I think, was 2 weeks.
So your drug of choice was meth.
Yeah.
And when you say you tried to quit, you mean everything. Because that's how it was.
I never really felt like I had to try to quit anything else.
Yeah, it was just
that's a really good question, but
yeah.
I only tried to quit meth ever. When I had meth, and this is so funny to say, like I smoked a lot. I was smoking like 2 packs a day too when I was smoking meth. But smoking cigarettes became one of my ways to smoke less meth. So like I would be sitting in my studio. I posted that picture on Instagram if anybody wants to see it, but it's like a picture of me in the studio. And I'm there with my dad and you see the ashtray in the back. And it's like one of those ones that you can push on and it will make the whatever ashes are there go down into the inside of the ashtray, so you can just have like the 1 or 2 that you just smoked recently. It's for people who smoke a ton.
Wow, yeah.
And it was always full, and it's full in that picture, and there's a bunch of stuff around it. But my rationale, which made a lot of sense for me at the time, was when I smoke cigarettes, I'm not smoking meth because I was just smoking meth all the time. I was selling it, so I would smoke $500 of meth a day or something like that, and I just had a pipe. It was always full, and I would just keep smoking it. And I knew that wasn't good.
I'm only laughing because I know him as who he is now. And I never knew him then. And I always just say like his old life, like his old life. Like I didn't know you then.
Yeah.
And just to imagine you that way, like it's mind boggling.
What did you think when you saw that picture?
I mean, I don't have as much emotional connection to it because I wasn't there, but like you look like a crackhead.
Yeah.
You look like Eminem on a really bad day.
When he was a crackhead.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not you. It's just it's someone else.
Because I don't see the same thing. I just see me back then.
Yeah.
So I just look like a little skinnier to myself. That's all I see.
You look like absolute shit.
And so I always wonder what other people see in it. But somebody asked me, do you have, this is the thing. People always like, they want proof that I was really as fucked up as I was because now I seem so normal.
Yeah.
At least to people who don't know me well. Haha. But I seem so normal that they're like, it couldn't have been that bad. And I'm like, no, it was pretty fucking bad. Like, pretty ridiculously bad.
Yeah.
There's actually somebody wrote me an email the other day. They wanted to join the course and they were like, I really want to check your criminal record just to make sure it was really that far back. So I get it from both sides, which is always really funny. I get people who are like, you went to jail, I don't trust you. And then people are like, I don't know if you went to jail long enough. I don't trust you. It goes both ways.
You can't win.
But I was smoking all the time, all day. So I was also smoking 2 packs a day, partially to smoke less meth. And you know, I started out in college. I was still in college when I started with meth.
And you started to smoke meth, just to be clear. Like he was a straight A student, super fucking smart. He's really cerebral. He's a Virgo. He's just like on it. His head is just screwed on right in many ways. And he was a great student. However, he didn't really want to go to class. So he didn't go to class a lot. But then to stay up for finals and to study for finals, he was like, oh, like who gave you that first?
I was a good student. Honestly, until halfway through having moved to the States in high school, when being a good student was no longer enough. Like when I was in Israel, if you got good grades on tests, nobody gave a fuck. Homework didn't matter. All that was prep for the test. And so because I could ace the test, nobody cared.
Right. That's what I meant. You're very book smart.
But I moved to the States and that started, there was a lot of conflict actually around school for me because I'm not good at completing tasks. I mean, I joke about this, but I hired my first assistant when I was a drug dealer.
And you couldn't complete things.
My car got impounded when I was selling drugs. It was a Nissan Altima. I think the payments were like $70 or $80 a month. Is like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I had $10,000 in my pocket.
Yeah.
Like I could have paid off the car.
Yeah.
I just forgot to make payments for months.
Yeah.
And so eventually they just came to the studio and took it. And I remember like realizing I'm really bad at this shit. I'd always been bad at it. I lose stuff all the time. I used to lose a lot more things. And so I realized I have the money, I have the drugs. Let me take some of the people who buy drugs from me and make them my assistant. And so, you know, people on meth really, really like organizing shit. And so they organized my life. And, but the reason I'm saying all of this is when I moved to the States, the standards of what it meant to be good at school changed and I became a bad student. I graduated in the bottom 50th percentile of my class. Just to be clear, there was like 300 people in my class. There were 150 people in my class that did better. Actually, there was more like 180 people in my class who did better than I did. I was the smart druggie in that group, but I didn't get away with anything. So I just, and again, it's funny, right? I was getting B's.
Right.
Low B's and stuff.
But
it
you
wasn't
probably
like I was
weren't
failing.
even trying.
I mean,
you're probably getting
anything.
low B's doing nothing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You are very smart and your brain allows you to half-ass it, yet still get a B-.
Here's the problem is and you know this about me, I'm such a perfectionist that when it wasn't perfect anymore, it didn't matter. And so the difference between getting a B and a C was not that big for me.
Yeah.
A C and a D, not that big a difference. So what happened is I kept giving up more and more and more. Long story short, I'm in college. I was using all the time. I went through a serious depression. Like, right, we were talking about the deep core issues. I have social anxiety, always have. You know this. Like when I smoke weed, it comes out. Even now, I feel really awkward. And I don't really know how to talk to people. And went to college. My girlfriend at the time, what's up, Allison?
Sup, girl?
Broke up with me for another guy, a senior. It was like this class, like you've seen this shit in the movie so many times. We both went to college. We went to different colleges, an hour apart from each other. She found the senior guy, pseudo cheated on me, not really cheated on me, but like went out on dates with him while we were dating, broke up with me, and I lost my shit. social anxiety, feel awkward around women in general. I had this thing, I had this thing like from junior high about being rejected by this girl I asked out. It's insane how long these things stay in your head. And so I went into this deep, deep, deep hole. And when I say deep hole, I just want to be clear. Like, if there's anybody here who's gone through a serious depression, I laid in my room till like noon to 3 p.m., depending on the day. I would start smoking weed and drinking the moment I would get up. I would drink and smoke till I was in oblivion, and then pass out around 3 or 4, and then do the same thing again. My poor fucking roommates in college, I feel bad for them now, and it's like 25 years later. I don't remember who they are even. But
please reach out if you are listening to this.
I want to describe, like, you know what? We're going deep, right? So I'll describe going deep. We had in the place in Buffalo where I went to school first, there was this common area for the room, and then 2 little suites where you kind of went into your own little bedroom. So there were 4 people total. They shared this common space. I was such an asshole and so disconnected from how my behavior was affecting people around me. I was a huge Nine Inch Nails fan at the time. Do you guys know that if you paint with tie-dye on walls and it becomes UV sensitive, so like you put black light on and it glows? I painted a massive 9 Inch Nails on the wall, like the logo, like the size of a human, each letter. I bought strobe lights. I had my stereo system.
You're such a dick.
And I would blast 9 Inch Nails in the common area.
Poor thing.
Just for the noise to drown out the self-hatred I had in my head. For hours a day. Like, I have friends still from that time. You know what? I'm going to ask them, like, what the fuck did people think of me back then?
Yeah.
I was insane. Nothing normal mattered.
But
I didn't care.
Things. You felt things deeply. Like, I felt like back then, you really knew how, like, you wrote a lot of music. You journaled poetry. But I'm just saying, you like really felt that range of your emotions.
I drowned in it, though.
Yeah.
I was drowning in it. And I couldn't handle it. So I needed outside noise to just take it out of my head. And I did. And I did a lot of it. And then I found more and more drugs. So I was already drinking. I was already smoking weed. But I found more and more drugs to make the noise quieter and quieter. And so somehow I got into UCLA, like in the middle of that insanity. And the reason is literally, thank God, like everything happens perfectly for the time that it's in, right? They asked for transcripts. My first year in college, I had like a 3.8 GPA because I hadn't gotten this. My girlfriend had broken up with me yet. Nothing had gone terribly bad. That's all the transcripts UCLA got. By the second year that I was there, I had like a 2.8, a 3.0. UCLA would have never accepted me if they had to get those final transcripts. And actually, it got even more insane. What happened was I got accepted into UCLA. Then they did get those transcripts, and they needed me to make up classes because I didn't do well enough. So in this drug haze, I was selling weed. I was doing acid, like just randomly in the middle of days, just like walking around doing acid.
Wow.
I took these extra classes. I was on probation for stealing, and like it was, my life was just pure insanity day in and day out. And I moved to UCLA. I didn't know a lot of drug users around UCLA, so things actually calmed down for a little bit. And then I got back into ecstasy pretty heavily with my other friend, who I'm not going to name here because I don't want to ruin her career. We got really, really heavily in ecstasy, and I was doing a lot of it, and it made me poor. So I started selling drugs, and I started selling ecstasy, and got a lot of friends. Like pretty quickly, I had 5 or 6, 7 close friends in college. Started selling drugs, had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Like 40, 50, 60 people. People walking up to me on campus. Hey, how you doing? Let's hang out. What are you doing tonight? Do you have some pills? Start selling ecstasy. And then through that, I got exposed to a lot of other things. Had some money for the first time. And then people started asking me for meth. I'd never heard of it before. Didn't even know what it was. Got them some. And then I went through another breakup with that same girl, the girl that I'd gotten really into ecstasy with. Second serious breakup. Here's the signal again. I go through a deep depression. But this depression started right during finals period at school. And so I had a motorcycle. I was living downtown in this artist loft with my partner at the time when we were making music. And it was raining every day. I was actually homeless for 2 days because I couldn't sleep at her house, which is where I was sleeping before. And I slept on like a friend's awning, like under their awning for their house. It was insane. And I knew I had 2 days before my first final. I hadn't studied in like a quarter and a half.
You just didn't go to school and didn't.
I was the kid. I don't know if anybody knows these kids. We show up, we get the syllabus on the first day. Now you don't even need to do that.
Fascinating.
And then you never show up again.
Yeah.
I was one of those kids. And
Opposite.
I knew, I'm like, I'm screwed if this finals period starts because I've been crying and like drowning my sorrows for days. What do I do? And somebody said, hey, I've got this stuff. If you take this stuff, you'll be able to stay up and study. I was like, cool, let's try it. So it was meth. It was the shittiest meth I've ever done in my life too. So not to be snobby about it or whatever, but I never sold crank, which is what this stuff was. It was crappy meth, but I did it with another girl at that same house and we stayed up for 3 days straight and studied. And when I say 3 days straight, some people listen to that and they go, oh, you studied a lot for 3 days?
And then you went to sleep.
Let me reiterate what I said before. I studied for 3 days straight. For 72 hours,
oh my God.
We sat around their dining room table and she and I would study and then we'd take smoke breaks. And then we'd come back and we'd study and we'd take smoke breaks and we'd study like 3 whole days. And in the middle of that, on the third day, I went and I took my first final. And I did okay because I'd studied for 3 days for it. And then I had 3 more finals during that finals period. So I was high for that entire thing, but I made it through. And back to the point that I make for everybody, which is you used to serve a purpose. What was that purpose? Get back to the purpose and fix that. From that point forward, finals periods meant meth. Because I could fuck around like I had been the entire time and show up a day or two before finals. I taught myself accounting in like 30 hours. I'd never been in that class. I sat with the book for 30 hours. I got like a B+ on the final and it felt normal. Like it worked. This is what I was saying before. Nobody gives a fuck while the things you're doing are working.
Right. You're getting good
they
grades.
They care when things are falling apart.
Right.
I was getting a B+. Nobody cared that I wasn't going to class. It was working.
Yeah.
The thing is, then my brain went, wait, if this works for finals, why aren't you doing it for midterms? And I started doing it for midterms. Still not partying with meth at all. Still not using it all the time. So I started doing it for midterms. And then for every big test. And that's when the stuff starts becoming a problem. Because now I'm doing it pretty much every week. There's a reason to use it. And now tolerance is building up. And now the same amount is not working. And now I need more.
Yep.
And I would say within a few months, maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months of using meth, I was using it pretty much daily. A little bit, but daily. And within a year, I was for sure using daily. Now I was selling a lot of it. I was selling it to other. So now not only people who do ecstasy, now people who are buying meth sell for me. Now I'm getting some other people to sell with me because now I got like 400 or 500 customers all over LA. I'm driving 250, 300 miles in LA every day selling my stuff. I'm still a student, by the way. Magically, somehow, I'm still supposed to be graduating. But it was, the ground was coming out from under me. Like slowly but surely, everything that was still okay and functional in my life was just falling apart.
And then you graduate somehow.
I barely graduate. My parents came for graduation. I didn't walk. Not only that, I didn't wake up to go pick them up at the hotel like I was supposed to. I got woken up graduation day to my parents shaking me in bed. I've got lines of meth next to my bed.
Oh my God.
I'm out. We run. Nobody talked about it, by the way.
You've never talked
about it? In my family. We've never, we talked about it now in my thing with my sister.
But your mom, who was there.
We never talked about it.
Was your sister there for graduation?
Oh yeah. They were in my room, like in my face.
Your
like,
sister is there and she sees the lines of meth.
Nobody talked about it.
Okay.
Nobody mentioned the drugs. Like this is where people say like the denial. I wasn't in denial about my problem. Everybody else around me didn't want to watch it. We went to the graduation, but here's the thing. I didn't graduate that day because I hadn't completed all the tasks. It took another 1.5 years for me to graduate from UCLA. My parents didn't know. I lied to them about it the whole time. And I just dug myself in. Like by the time we got to that place where I was saying in that picture where I'm smoking all the time and I'm smoking meth, my entire life was about getting high and selling drugs. I knew hundreds of people, but I didn't know anybody that didn't get fucked up the way I did. Like not a single human. Everybody else had left me. All the normal people had left me. And my life was about using, selling to other people who would use, using with them. Then they would leave. Then I would use. Then at some point I would pass out and then I'd come back to. And
you were in it. You were in it hard. You were in it for years. You didn't give a shit about anyone else but yourself. You treated people disrespectfully. Even before you started using meth when you were just in college, like you didn't care. You had no self-awareness. You were bulldozing over other people's needs. It was all about you. And then you used more and harder drugs.
Yeah.
And then you were super addicted. You did what you want when you wanted to. You also had this fake sense of social approval.
Yeah.
Women wanted to be with you because you were the drug dealer and you had what they wanted.
I had money and I had drugs.
Yeah. And then same with some other friends. Like they wanted to hang out with you because that. So you had this like veil of.
I call it, I was the king of shit.
Yeah.
It was like, I ruled my own kingdom. There were like a few hundred people in it. In that place, when I would walk into a room, everybody would go like, hey, Adi's here. Like everybody would be so happy.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would be 3 hours late. Yeah. And they would be ecstatic that I was there.
It's like a nightmare.
It's just the world that I ruled was a useless world that nobody really wanted to be a part of. And I realized that every once in a while. And when it really would dawn on me, I would try to quit.
Yeah.
Even
then you realize like
the way it would look is like
you'd be sober for a minute or?
No, I would find myself alone every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I asked somebody else about this a little bit ago. I think maybe at one of our interviews. And when I would find myself alone, the thought would be like, what the fuck is happening? I graduated UCLA. Everybody I hung out around, and this is not a put down to anybody who didn't graduate college, but sometimes people go like, oh, you went to college? It's like, how did I get here? Like how did this, how am I surrounded by people who are surprised that I went to college?
Yeah.
You don't need to go to college if you don't want to, but like, why are people surprised that that's where I am?
Yeah.
And I would ask these self-questioning things. And I have this really like vivid picture in my head of where I was in this blacked out studio on this couch that I would pass out on sometimes, asking myself that question. And every once in a while, like I said, about 5 to 7 and 9 times overall in my using career, I would say I need to be done. And normally that would look like it was only for the meth. And I would try to stop. The first couple of times I tried to just stop using myself. Then I realized I had to stop selling it because I couldn't sell it and not use it. And the most I ever made it to is 2 weeks, I think. And I actually think that the time that I made it to 2 weeks was the time that I got in the accident.
Why was it on you?
No, I was clean. I had coke on me.
You had coke on you. I'm just saying you still were selling.
Again. I knew I was addicted to meth. I needed to quit meth.
And stop selling meth.
Drug was not even on my radar. Got it. I was going to continue being a drug dealer. I just needed to stop smoking meth so much.
So then you got in the motorcycle accident and you had coke on you in the inner lining of your leather jacket.
I'd hidden I think it was about a half a pound or a quarter pound of coke that was left from selling it around town. And I hid it in the lining of my jacket because you're always prepared when you sell drugs. And I got in this accident and the cops kept trying to get my jacket. And I was like, holding on to it for dear life. And I gave them my license. I gave them everything I could so they wouldn't take my jacket. But it was Beverly Hills. And I have a feeling they just wanted to search me.
And they probably knew what you were up to.
No, they'd arrested me like 2 or 3 times already. So my name was on their radar.
Yeah.
And they arrested me. This is the moment they found it. They found it in like...
And that was the beginning of the end, kind of. Like, it was kind of like, then they were on to you.
Was the start.
You broke your leg.
I broke my leg. I couldn't walk. They arrested me in the hospital. Like, I woke up with that thing, like, where you're chained to the bed and there's a cop next to you. They put
You say that thing like anyone has ever experienced.
No, but you've seen it. You've seen it in movies.
Okay,
like
so the thing you've seen in movies, not something that you've ever done.
No, of course not. It's like one person listening maybe who this has happened to. My arm was like shackled to the bed. And then they thought they were going to arrest me that day, but they realized I couldn't walk. I was not a flight risk. I literally couldn't get out of bed and wouldn't be able to without severe pain for months. So they let me go. But what they did is they found a bunch of drugs on me. So they said, let's put pressure on him and find out where he got it. Because you don't use a half a pound of coke. They knew I was a dealer. Yeah. So the question was more
where did you get that from? They want to go
off the chain.
Yeah.
And so they kept trying to squeeze me. Literally, this happened. And our friend, who again, I'm not going to mention her name, was with me walking around Beverly Hills around one of my court dates. Cops would stop sometimes. Only two of the cops, the detectives that were like on my case, they would stop when they would see me in Beverly Hills and talk to me. Like, try to get me. So are you ready? Are you ready to talk to us? And they would try to squeeze me and tell me. And I wasn't going to snitch. I was never going to tell them who I was buying it from. And they got really mad about it. And they kept being mad about it. And I thought I was being smart by not telling them and just hiding. Then they got really pissed. And so one Saturday, they just came to my house at 8 o'clock in the morning and the SWAT team arrest and guns out. 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm passed out on GHB in my bed. I don't even know what's happening. I come to, it's like these dark shadows just coming into the room, just guns out, dressed in all black like you see it in the movies all the time. And it's, like literally if there was a camera at the time, this is the ideal movie to make about this stuff. I had, you guys remember those full wall size posters that we would get in college? The ones that are like like 6 foot tall posters. I had one right behind my bed of John Lennon on that white piano playing Imagine. So that was right behind my bed. But there was also a gun and a meth pipe and all these other things right next to it. They came to arrest me. Thank God I didn't reach for the gun because they would have shot me. But they asked, do you have any weapons here? So I had the gun. They went and got the gun. And then after that, they picked me up because I can't walk. And they put me in the living room. So three cops pick me up and walk me over to the living room to sit me down.
I feel so nauseous right now, by the way. Like, sure. I've heard this story so many times and I am nauseated. Like, I could throw up right now. Just to imagine you going through this. It's like so painful.
And they wanted to search the room, so they need me out of it. And so they put me on the couch, kind of like a couch like we're sitting on right now. But behind that one was another 6-foot poster.
Oh yeah.
A Scarface poster.
Right.
And I remember just the irony. Like, I thought about this months after this happened. I'm sitting, leg broken. In the picture, he's got his arm broken. He's just been shot up. He's a coke dealer. I've been selling drugs.
Yep.
And there's cops just going through my house. And I'm sitting there like,
damn.
Fuck.
Careful what you wish for.
I knew. Well, it's funny actually that you say that because Scarface is one of those movies every drug dealer loves.
Idolizes.
All punks love it. But if you think about it, that motherfucker gets shot up like 400 times, staying alone in his room, watching closed circuit TV of people breaking into his house. So it's a nightmare. He's not living through a good life.
Yeah.
So that was
interesting
now the second
what
break.
we romanticize as humans, isn't
100%,
it? Like
100%.
You get into something, you know it doesn't feel right, you know it's not good for you, but then you get like lost in it. It's like a nightmare that you get lost in. He was living a nightmare, you were living a nightmare.
I was living a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
And now this is just because you said this is the beginning of the end when I got in the accident. This is technically like the second or third stop sign I got because I'd been arrested in Beverly Hills and spent like 3 or 4 days in their jail before. Then there was that arrest in the hospital. I broke my leg. Other dealers that were selling from me, like they would come buy stuff from me and sell, they were scared of coming to my house because I'd been arrested. I had a broken leg. I couldn't leave. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't leave my house. They would have to come to my house. We were afraid that we were being watched.
Probably were.
Which we probably were given what happened with the SWAT team and everything after. And I was physically, like there was a physical stop sign. You can't do this anymore. But I had to go farther. So a SWAT team comes and they get me. And then I go to jail. And this time it was serious. It was $750,000 bail. They got me for 13 felony counts because every drug is a different felony. And then I had 3 manufacturing counts because I had materials to make meth, which I wasn't actually making. But a friend of mine who had been arrested like 3 weeks earlier left his meth supplies with me so that he would get busted with it because he thought he was close. And so they found that at my house and they found me trying to figure out how to make ecstasy, which we had made a few years earlier. So I got like 13 felony counts. The weapons start, all of that. $750,000 bail. And I'm in jail where and USC has a county medical wing, which is attached to kind of like where people who get arrested and have serious injuries need to go. They wouldn't let me bring my crutches because crutches in jail are a weapon. So I'm kind of jumping up on one leg, which is what I was doing anyway. But I'm in this place and I can't explain the level of like dysfunction, filth, disgusting, animal-like way people live in that place. The toilets both had broken. So there's just toilet water all over the floor. There's between the two, I think there was 2 adjoining rooms that were in it. There were like 12 of us. So like 3 bunk beds in each one. Everybody is fucked up. Like the only reason you're in that place is you can't walk, you broken arm, you're broken. Like you're so broken they can't put you in a regular jail. Oh my God. And that's where I go. And I'm laying in this bed and I'm just thinking to myself, like, what the fuck is happening? And now I'm starting to withdraw from the meth because now it's been, I spent about 12 hours in LA in the Beverly Hills jail before they took me to LA County. And we were trying to do everything to not go to LA County because we knew that was the beginning of the end. And now I'm in this room. Toilet water's broken. This guy who like had jumped out of a window 3 stories up because he was trying to escape the cops, broke both his legs. He's like next to me. It is the epitome. Like if you watch Orange is the New Black or any of those kinds of shows, this is when shit gets really, really bad. That's that moment that I'm in. And I'm not getting out because it's a $750,000 bail. And I call my dad. I hadn't talked to them in forever, but my lawyer contacted them when I was in the Beverly Hills jail. And so I call my dad collect from that phone. He's like, hey, we're trying to get together the money to get you out. And I'm like, don't. don't touch it.
Yep.
You're not spending, it would have been $75,000 they would have had to spend that they would never get back to get me out of I don't need your money. Don't touch anything. Let me be here. I'm going in front of a judge in a few days. I'll sort this out. And I spent 5 or 6 days in that room. It was a weekend because they got me out on the weekend. I think it was even like a long weekend. So within 24 hours, I was so tired I couldn't function, because that's what happens when you withdraw from meth. You get into depression and your body now needs to catch up to all the sleep that it lost. And so for, I think it was 5 days, maybe it was 4, maybe it was 6, but for a while, all I would do is sleep in that bunk. And I remember I slept in the bunk right next to the bar. So when people would walk by, I wouldn't even hear them until I would wake up. Somebody would shake me and wake me up and say, hey, food's here. And I would eat because my body was starving. I was 125 pounds, 124 pounds. I would eat and then I would pass right back out. And I did that for essentially 5 days. Sleep, eat, sleep, eat, sleep, eat. And by the end of that, my body could actually stay up for a few hours at a time without the meth.
You're recovering.
And I was just withdrawing, which is honestly a fucking blessing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know in what other surrounding I would have zero choice to stop. Because here's the thing, right? Everybody talks about stopping. I tried to stop 9, 10 times. I got put in a situation where I had to. Now I got out and now I was quote unquote clean, got out, and we had to figure out what to do. And, you said, again, multiple stop signs, right? So my lawyer said, you got to go to rehab. And I was like, why rehab? What is that? I don't want to go to rehab. And he goes, well.
Also, you were clean.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny, the system?
Yeah, I was clean. What happened was it
was like a deal that they had to make, right? With the courts?
It wasn't even a deal yet. Like nothing had happened. I had just been arrested. I was clean for 5 days because I was in jail. But nobody trusted me to fucking
stay clean.
Nobody trusted me farther than they could pee on me. It wasn't even throw a rock. Throwing a rock was too far. Within a couple of feet. As long as I was within a couple of feet of you, you knew what I was doing. Other than that, you had no idea.
Yeah.
And so.
Sketchy, yeah.
Totally. And so he was like, no, you got to go to rehab because we got to show them that you're good. Otherwise, you're going to go to prison for 20, 18 years. That's probably what you're looking at. I was like, oh, fuck. Let's go to rehab. But here's the thing. And here's why I say quitting is not the freaking deal. It has nothing to do with quitting. I threw a party, and it wasn't a party. It was me, my dealer, the guy who I was buying from at the time, this one girl that I was hooking up with, and one other person. And we got together in that apartment, the same apartment I just got arrested in, still with the neon pink sign on the door of, that the SWAT team had been there and their dangerous substances have been discovered. So that's on the outside of the door. And inside, we're just smoking meth all night, doing drugs all night. We actually took a picture. That girl was a photographer. We took a picture with the signs on me. We had no sense of what was normal in the world. I took the signs off the door, put them on me. She took a picture of me with a meth pipe,
wow, yeah,
using while having that sign around. I went right back to doing what I knew how to do. It's just all I knew. And so we threw this party, and then that girl was, she drove me to rehab the next day. And I knew nothing about addiction until I walked in those doors. But I got taught real quick, right? You go to rehab and they search through your stuff for obvious reasons. And they put you in these groups and you get taught the language really, really quickly. And I knew I was addicted to meth. But the concept of identifying myself as an addict, as an alcoholic, never even crossed my mind.
Right.
And it was in that first group in rehab that they asked me, they sat me down and they said, well, actually not, they didn't sit me down. They stood me in the middle of the circle and said, why are you here? And I would give them, normal human experiences answers well, I went to jail and my lawyer thinks that I should really go to rehab because we're facing a lot. Nope, that's not why you're here. Well, I'm addicted to meth and my parents really want me to get, that's not why you're here. I really want to, I really want to get my life straight. You're just trying to give people the fucking answer they want because you're in the middle of a circle and you're weird and you're embarrassed and I'm still coming off of the meth from the night before. It was not a good experience. And eventually they give you the answer after what felt like 45 minutes, but probably was 5. They gave me the answer. And the answer is you're here because you're an addict. And it was that simple. You're here because you're an addict.
And every other answer is wrong.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I tried all of them.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're an addict. That's why you're here. Everybody's here because they're addicts. And they give you the language. And you know what? I fucking took it.
Yep.
I took it. First of all, because it got me out of the circle.
Of course.
Secondly, because that made me accepted in that group.
Accepted. Yeah.
And so
There is no option.
None. And so I ran with it, and it was hard. I definitely still wasn't clean the first few weeks. I brought Tylenol PM. I think I how did I sneak Tylenol PM in with me? I got Tylenol PM in them somehow. And because I was having a really hard time sleeping, because surprise, I'm a pretty anxious fucking kid, already anxious before, but now facing 20 years in prison in a rehab with people I don't know. My parents knowing everything that had happened, really, really a lot of anxiety. And so I would take Tylenol PM to fall asleep, which was against the rules. You're not supposed to take anything to do anything. So I was lying about that. And I was just doing my best to just keep my head on straight.
And then you got through that experience. You got through rehab.
Well,
and then you had to go to jail, right?
Yeah, I didn't get through rehab though. I got to go to work a month into being clean in that rehab. They let me go to work, and work at the time was a studio. So it was like a joke that they let me go back, but we had pull because we were a private paying client. So they let me go back to work, and I sat in the studio. Again, things I wouldn't have known to identify back then. But what I did in my studio was use drugs, kind of play around with music, and watch porn. That's all I did. So
you did that.
So I did that during the day, and I found some drugs that were still hidden in the place. I had my storage space that had a ton of other drugs in it that nobody knew about.
They tested you, right? It's a rehab.
I mean, they didn't test me unless they felt like they needed to test me. So they didn't test me for at least another month or so. And then they let me out on New Year's Eve, which is it's a test. And here's again my point. They measured how I was doing by abstinence, and then they sent me to like the lion's den to test to see, will he be abstinent? Now, I showed up high as a motherfucker. I was up that entire night on meth. I was trying to drink those drinks later. You know, we've talked to your brother about this stuff. We tried to drink those drinks to clean out your system. Didn't do anything. The moment I walked into the rehab, they tested me. And I'd been smoking meth for a straight day. I probably looked like a nightmare. And they test me, but back then tests wouldn't come back until like a week later. So they test, and I keep going on. And I'd been lying to everybody there for at least a month. I was already using. And again, my point, right, getting us back to where we started, the abstinence didn't get me anywhere because I wasn't actually dealing with anything that was going on. So I became, in the story already, I've been abstinent like 8 or 9 times.
Yeah.
It just never stuck because nobody ever dealt with the underlying stuff. So they test me, it comes back, and then one day I come in from a group or something like that, and they're like, hey, you have to pack up your stuff. You tested positive for meth. And I tried to lie to them and tell them all the stuff I wasn't using. I had taken Sudafed because I had a cold, because Sudafed has ephedrine in it. And I was trying to lie in every way that I could. They wouldn't hear it. I had to leave, pack all my stuff, go in the car. I'm now homeless other than this car. And that was a big moment for me because I'd been in that rehab for 3 months at that point in time. Everybody thought I was sober for 3 months, but I'd gotten like 3 weeks, and then started using again, and I was lying. And my dad called because he called every day back then, and we talked all the time. And I was in my studio, probably using again. And I had this whole setup to lie to him about what happened. And the setup was, hey, it was really far from my work. And so I was driving a lot, and that's a lot of miles on the car and costing a lot in gas. I need to find something closer to work. I don't want to drive around that much. I had this whole story. And he was kind of buying it like he always bought everything since I was 8. And then I stopped myself, and I remember I said, you know what? I'm lying. I got kicked out. And sorry. And I told him the truth. I said I got kicked out. They caught me using. They tested me, and they found meth. And I'm crying because I don't get to talk to my dad anymore.
Yeah.
But also because that call was really a beginning of change.
Yeah. It's like the first moment that you
I told the truth.
Yeah, that you told the truth.
I told the truth. And
you owned it.
And it was not good. Like I told the truth. I felt relief, but my dad started just screaming when my dad never yelled. And I started yelling at me. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What do you expect to do? You just threw away 3 months. You're facing
decades in prison. You're not going to go to prison for the rest of your life. And he just kept going on and on and on. And we ended it with a question, and he said, "Oh, what do you want us to do?" What was the question he asked? "What do you expect me to do?" And I said, "You can't do anything."
It's like the worst thing to say to a parent too. But there's nothing left to do.
I just said to him, "I have to figure this out. I need to figure this out. This isn't you. You can't do anything about it."
Yeah.
And he wasn't happy about it. And it wasn't the answer he wanted. But it was also true. And again, why abstinence is not the barometer by which you measure success is that's when my recovery started. Ownership. I used for another 2 weeks every day. I was sleeping sometimes on the couch and sometimes in bed with this other girl who like had used to buy drugs for me, and we would hook up sometimes. And so she like gave me a place to crash. But I used every day, everything I had. I got more shit. Like I could not deal with what was going on, but I knew something had to change. And now and that was
a shift.
And I owned it. And throughout that, I was going to this weird outpatient thing at Kaiser Permanente that did nothing for my recovery, but I was doing something. I was going to something almost every day. And I kept looking for a place. My counselor at that place was helping me find sober livings. And it took like 2 to 3 weeks to find a place. And I drove to this place. And by that, I mean, it took me 2 to 3 weeks to get enough shit done to find a place. There were probably places earlier. But I found this place that he gave me the number of, and I made a call, and I made an appointment to come in. And it was a night appointment, like 8 or 9 p.m. And I showed up with sunglasses on because I'd been using the entire time and I didn't want to look them in the eyes. But now I knew I needed help. And so I sat there. We made an agreement that I was going to come in. It was way cheaper, which made me feel better anyway because I didn't like having my parents spend like 10 grand a month for a program that wasn't fucking doing anything for me anyway. This was like $1,500 a month at the time, which made me feel a lot better. And I was taking control, and that was really important. So we talked. We made an agreement that I would come in the next day, and we came in. And of course, they were abstinence driven. Of course, they were AA based. They were everything that was traditional in treatment.
Yeah,
because it's the only thing that there is. But now I wanted it.
Yeah.
Now I knew. I'm like, if I don't own this shit, I'm going away for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so I did what they told me to do. And what they told me to do wasn't even that important. Yes, there was humility. Yes, there was owning up to my shit, but they didn't know 80% of the stuff. It took years to get through all the layers of bullshit that I had. But now I was committed. Now I wanted it. And that's a transformation that needs to happen. You know, sometimes people in traditional groups call it like a spiritual awakening, a white light moment, call it whatever you want. There was a moment of, I have to own this.
Yeah.
And so I did what I needed to. I still fucked up in that place. I just didn't use.
Right.
I fucked up in other ways. And when I fucked up and they would be like, yo, you got to step up or you're out of here. I knew what that meant now. And what that meant was I'm going to throw my life away. And so I just kept trying to do my best and screwing it up and doing my best and screwing it up and doing my best. And the entire time we were in court. So every month my dad would come out or my mom would come out with my sister, and we go to court, and they would see the progress, and we would tell them where I'm at and what's going on. And about 8-9 months after I came into that place was like the last day. And I was still, the minimum we could get them down to was 3 years. And my lawyer said, look, you've done great. You've you cleaned up. You like did all the stuff you needed to do. I think I can get you a better deal. And it was a scary fucking moment because I had two options. I could essentially take the deal that the DA was giving me, which was 3 years to one charge, back to that motorcycle. When they caught me with half or a quarter pound, I don't remember the exact number, but more than 1 ounce of cocaine, there was a mandatory minimum sentence, and that was 3 years that you're supposed to serve. And they said, look, we'll take everything else away. Plead guilty to that charge. You'll go to prison for 3 years. Good time. You'll be out in a year and a half. But it was prison, and it was a longer sentence. And my lawyer said, I think I can get you a better deal. But then you have to do this thing. It's called an open plea. And that meant I had to go in court and plead guilty to everything. And he could have said 10. Like, you don't know what happens.
Is that what you did?
And I did. Yeah. So I stood there. My mom couldn't come because she couldn't watch it, but my dad showed up. Yeah, my dad was there all the time.
Yeah.
And I did it. I stood up and they would just read every offense, and I would just say, I have to plead guilty, and then that means you're giving up your rights. It's like, there were like 9 of them, one after the other, and then the judge goes away, and he tries to make his decision, and he came back, and he gave me 364 days, just under a year. Because if you go for a year or more, you go to prison. It's an entirely different system.
Wow.
So he gave me like a third of the sentence that I was going to get otherwise. But he said straight up, look, I'm giving you this just under a year, but I'm putting 7 years. It's called a suspended sentence. I'm giving you another 7 years. It's waiting. If you don't fuck up, you get through probation. Everything else is good. He didn't say fuck up, obviously. But you'll do this time and you're done. So, but if I catch you selling drugs again, whatever you get next time, you got another 7 years on top of it. And and that was like, that was this moment of just recognition that whatever I did up to that point paid off. Like my mom to this day is mad at the judge for giving me a year, but that was a blessing.
Oh yeah.
We got gratitude coming up next month on Ignited, and like I'm grateful every day for Judge Fox in Beverly Hills who gave me that chance, because I did my year. I did.
So he's the one that actually
you saw him.
I saw him, but he's the one that gave you the original sentence.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So he gave you that sentence, and then when on the flip side, I met you.
So you met me.
Wow, you had a long relationship with him.
3 years later. I mean, he knew me since like 2001, 1999. Like he knew me for like 6 or 7 years.
We should have him over for dinner.
I'd love to. And so, yeah, he gave me that year. I did the year in jail. I got out, and then I had to redo my life. And you and I have talked a lot about where that ended up. But to bring it back to the story, you were there on like our, I don't know, 4th or 5th date, or early on in our relationship.
We met in UCLA, ironically.
At UCLA.
We met at UCLA in a neuroscience class and started studying together.
Yeah.
And in the neuroscience class, we talk a lot about drugs.
That's why you took it. That's the room where once in a midterm, I'd done so much meth that in the middle of the test, I thought I saw all the lights get dim. Like I was sitting taking the final, and it seemed to me like somebody turned the lights down, and I looked around and nobody else was looking around. And I was like,
because D went to undergrad at UCLA, and then also after jail
went
to graduate school.
Well, I went to Cal State Long Beach, and I ended up at UCLA. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that same room that you and I met in, I had like essentially a hallucination under meth, and then I went back into the bathroom. Like I was smoking in the bathrooms. I was smoking meth in the bathrooms and under staircases in that same room.
Talk about exposure therapy.
Totally. So then a few weeks after we met, you went to court with me.
Yep. I spent the night at Dee's house, and this was a couple weeks after meeting. Not far, actually, just a couple weeks after. And we went to court.
It's a romantic date.
I was still wearing the clothes from the day before. And yeah, I was sobbing. I was sobbing the entire, because it was basically to see if he had to continue on with probation, to check in. It was actually a check-in, right? And they ended up releasing you?
It was a check-in, but we were asking. It was over 3 years of probation after the original jail term. And so we were essentially asking for probation to be terminated.
Yeah. So we went in, and I won't get into the whole story because we don't have the time for it, but it was the most moving experience to witness this man. I mean, the judge had your back. He watched you over years transform into the person before him. And he was basically yelling at the person. Who was that from the DA side?
The DA, yeah. They didn't want to let me off the hook yet.
Yeah. And he was like, this man is a dream. Like the fact that he just got accepted to one of the top universities in the world for a PhD program, in this program, and the fact that he has transformed his life in this way before us, like this is what we all want. This is like, please go off into society and be you and shine bright. And I was just sobbing, and it was so beautiful to witness. And that began the beginning of your,
Well, that was already in the middle, but you bring up a really important point that I think helps me tie together why I do what I do now. I'm here because of the support I had from the people around me. I'm here because that judge gave me a chance.
yeah.
I'm here because even though I fucked up over and over and over, people held a tiny bit of space for me to do well. And I feel like almost that is my pay it forward thing now, right? Like, I don't care how far down you've been. I say this to people all the time. There's no bottom you've been to. There's no terrible thing you've experienced where I don't believe you can come back up, because I've seen it. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of hundreds and thousands of other people. And that judge being willing to accept that I was willing in that moment to change my life gave me an opportunity. I don't know what would have happened if I got 3, 5, 7, 8, 12 years, 18 years in prison.
Who you would be now?
Probably not the same person I am right now, right?
Yeah.
And so in the end, it comes back to us understanding that we're all humans. Like, we just want to be okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, for whatever reason, I didn't feel okay at the time. And it was starting to get better. So don't squash somebody because they're not perfect.
Right.
Instead, help them rise, right? And
after your PhD, and you weren't using it all. When I met you, you weren't even. You would drink like.
I didn't drink.
Alcohol was never even your thing, but you still were like very just.
I was 100% sober for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I took the AA experiment and I started drinking again. And the experiment's been running since 2005. So I'm going to call that a success.
Yep.
It's been 14 years of social drinking.
In light of radical transparency, when he wanted to take that first drink, he called his support system and he said,
"Oh, we talked for 6 months.
Just to let you know, I'm going to try a glass of champagne at my girlfriend's X, Y, and Z party. I want you all to know that I'm doing this."
Yeah.
It was a group support effort. His loved ones, his family members, his sponsor.
I even talked to my sponsor about it.
Radical transparency.
It's funny, radical transparency.
Yeah.
It's like at the beginning of this whole journey is radical transparency.
Yeah.
And they all knew. My mom wasn't worried because she thought I never had a problem with alcohol. My dad was freaked out, of course. But I talked and I was like, look, you guys are in on everything. I'm not lying about anything. I don't want to lie about this. Let me try this out. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to sobriety. So I was sober completely for 3 years. By the time you met me, I was socially drinking again.
Yeah.
But not using anything else.
Yeah. And what are other things in terms of recovery like that helped you? You were in the gym a lot. I
worked out a lot. Yeah. So I broke my leg and I couldn't walk I was in a wheelchair for 3 months, crutches for another 8. I couldn't walk. So by the time I was in Cal State Long Beach, I was really so after jail, really, I was going to physical therapy and then eventually the gym a lot, and exercise really, really helped me. What else? Look, friends and support really was hugely important.
Yeah.
But then also for me, having a goal. So I tell the story a lot. I couldn't get hired out of jail because nobody gets hired out of jail, which is a nightmare for people who had convictions. My family, thankfully for me, was willing to support me in going back to school. So my parents had to pay my rent and school for me to be able to go back, which was thousands of dollars a semester. And they were willing to do it, again, because they were willing to support me. Within about a semester and a half, 2 semesters, I got a job there. So I was able to start paying for some of my own stuff, which felt really, really good. But I had a purpose.
Yeah.
And so purpose, support, hope from other people first, but then it ingrained in me. Those were all huge factors for me. And then for me, like I always say, like education, understanding more. I studied addiction. I went in and studied it really, really heavily. And then what happened, the reason I even started drinking again was I was like, I don't think that explanation they give me in AA is the right explanation, at least not for me.
Yeah.
And it gave me the balls to kind of say, I think there's something else out there.
Yeah. And like defining your own version of what that means instead of what someone else predetermines.
Yeah. And so I took my journey. I went back to school, got my PhD, started seeing people, saw people in a rehab, opened up my own rehab, and now we do Ignited. But the point is always to just be that back, to be that support, to be that shining beacon of hope, light, inspiration for people who are currently struggling and just are not finding the answer, as like 90% of people are not finding the answer in the traditional ways. Because I got sober through traditional means because nobody else gave me any other chance.
the bottom line is I just wanted it and owned it when the time came.
And dealt with what the system at hand.
And if you're ready to own it, you should be able to find something that speaks to you, not just something that somebody is willing to give you.
Yeah.
And that's my thing, because otherwise it would be funny, right? I would just make everybody go, well, first you go to 3 years of AA and then you do this other thing. My story doesn't need to be your story. That's not the point.
No.
The point is that recovery looks different on everybody, and you should be okay with that. Even if other people's recovery doesn't look like yours, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Are they doing well? Is their life moving forward in a meaningful, constructive way? If it is, kudos to them.
Yeah.
Hallelujah and amen. Let's just keep this going.
So one person asked from my Instagram, how often does a D drink and how much per sitting and what's his boundary basically? It's funny, I was going to say this. So when we first met, a D would be very controlled. He is still pretty controlled, but he would drink like once a month, maybe twice a month. He wouldn't have more than 2.5 drinks. I never saw him drunk, never, when we first met. And I was 20 years old, an undergrad at UCLA. So to me, like that wasn't normal. Like you drink as much as you possibly could. If you were going to drink, you were going to drink. He was also 8 years older than me. So I was like, oh, maybe it's just because of this. But then he told me his story. So now I'd say it's pretty similar. Again, you drink, if he drinks more than once in a week, we have a conversation around it. Like, oh, I noticed you came home. He doesn't come home from work anymore, but he used to come home from work and when he worked at the rehab in Beverly Hills and he ran the rehab, he would come home someday. I mean, he was like picking up cigarette smoking once in a while because he was stressed, or he'd come home and he would have 3 drinks and the next night he would have 3 drinks. And I'd be like, ooh.
I think that's the thing we notice a lot. So I drink honestly right now, and I'll explain the whole trajectory because this is important for Recovery Month. And if we go long, it's okay. I think this is probably going deep episodes are probably ones where we can go long. I hope that's okay. I still probably right now, I probably drink actually 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Maybe even 4 days, some weeks.
Yeah.
But I just have a half glass of wine.
Yeah, we share a glass of wine.
Yeah. And so the amount I drink is actually very small. I pretty much have a rule, and it's now, if you've never taken my 21-day habit reset challenge, take it next time it comes up or buy the lifetime access because we talk about creating habits. I now essentially never drink more than 3 drinks.
Yep.
Ever.
Yep.
Like, I've noticed this. We'll go to a wedding where it's not a problem to have 5-6 drinks, and my brain internally stops wanting drinks after like halfway through the second one.
Yeah.
Third one,
you've taught your body. You taught your...
Exactly.
I did want to talk a little bit, just ask you really quick, like...
Please.
Neuroplasticity, isn't that how your brain, like how you can create new wiring and new patterns?
Yeah. It's
like at any age.
Yeah, neuroplasticity is the concept that your brain is plastic. It changes. And so new connections are created all the time. This is the antithesis to the you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's bullshit. All of us are old dogs that learn new tricks all the time. It's just not true. Honestly, look, let's just be really, really clear about it. If you wake up tomorrow and you remember a sentence that I spoke in this podcast that you just listened to, that is neuroplasticity. The only way your brain can remember anything that I said an hour from now, 3 days from now, is because it changed. That's how memory works. So yes, neuroplasticity is the way through, the mechanism through which you create new habits. We all do it. We all do it. Those of you who go to AA, by the way, you do it too. When you want to drink, you go to a meeting. You just created a new habit. You can do that with anything. We had a client on the Ignited weekly chat, which I fucking love, man. That thing is so amazing. And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
And that's part of my
course, my Ignited Hero program. So I have a program, I call it the Ignited Hero program. And the reason I call it the Ignited Hero program is because everybody comes in thinking they're losers, addicts, assholes who will never amount to anything, and they're lazy and worthless. And I don't see people that way. So I help people discover their internal hero, the person inside who's just been waiting to get out, but didn't really feel like they deserved it to some extent. So we had this guy, and in the middle of a chat on a topic that he brought up, he was really honest, radical transparency. He said in the chat, he says, wow, we're about to end this chat and I really want to drink. And I was so happy that he said that because I said, oh, I know why you want to drink right now. Thank you for being honest about it. I know why you want to drink. He brought up a topic. The last time this topic came up in his life was when he was really stressed in this company running a whole division of 95 people. And I said, look, you've never said this to me before, but did you drink a lot during that time period when you ran that company? He said, oh yeah, I would have lunches where I would go drink. I don't drink during lunch, but I would go out and have 2 drinks at lunch so I could handle the rest of the day. So that's why you really want to drink right now.
Right.
Because your brain is finally talking about something it hasn't talked about in years. And the last time you talked about this stuff, you were really stressed out and your brain associates this topic with drinking. You don't want to drink right now. You think you're stressed.
The old you
used to drink when this thing would come up and he goes, oh my God, you're so right. And here was the beauty of it. If he hadn't said that on the chat, he would have felt like a piece of shit. He would have said to himself, what's wrong with me? I want help. I'm paying this guy for help. I'm on a chat about stopping drinking and I want to drink. And then I go have a drink after the chat. What is wrong with my head? I'm insane.
Well, he couldn't have understood it.
But because we had the discussion, I pointed out to him and he was like, oh my God, you're so right. I said, I have an exercise for you right now. You can do it. This is a freebie for everybody listening right now. If you feel safe enough in where you are, don't do this if you're under like duress or risk. But if you want to show your brain how different things can be, here's an exercise for you. Take your favorite drink, the thing you always love drinking when you come home from work or it's late or the weekend, whatever it is. Take your favorite drink and take a glass that you love drinking it in. Pour some in and look at it for a little bit. Swirl it around, look at what it does. Smell it if you feel really, really strong. Smell it. Look at it more and then pour it down the sink. For some of you right now, this sounds like nothing. For others of you, I just told you to burn your firstborn in the devil's playground because it sounds insane. And the reason it sounds insane, you've never done it. Most people who drink all the time, whenever they pour a glass of wine, they finish it.
Yeah.
Your brain is plastic. Your brain changes all the time. You can teach your brain to do things differently than you've done them before. By the way, that same guy posted a video of him doing that exercise and the takeaway, and he was like, oh my God, this felt so weird and so hard. But as soon as it was done, I felt okay.
Yeah.
Whether it's my online program, whether it's a 21-day habit reset challenge, whether it's the abstinence myth book or anything else that we've done, the point is simple. You've started engaging in whatever behavior you've been engaging in, whatever drink, whatever drug, whatever porn, whatever food you've been enjoying here because of life. Stop focusing on the thing, start focusing on the areas of life you need to fix. And if we do that well, your addiction just won't be a problem anymore.
Yeah.
Did you have any other questions that were relevant?
There were a bunch of questions actually.
Okay.
Let's take maybe one more.
Okay.
Interested in knowing if you still deal with any triggers even now, years after recovery.
Do you want to tell the funny story that you and I had together because you were there for it?
Sure.
So when we met, Sophie would always tell me she wanted me to watch this show, 6 Feet Under. And we talked about it forever and ever and ever. And then eventually we decided to watch it. So we opened up my laptop and we were living together. I was, again, drinking socially, totally normally at the time. And we start watching the show. And if you've never watched 6 Feet Under, the opening scene is the dad and the family driving in a car and the other people kind of living their own little part of life. And you follow the dad in his car. And then eventually he goes out and he pulls out a joint and he puts it in his mouth and he goes to smoke weed. This is before the days weed was legal. And then he drops the joint. It's on fire and he's kind of freaking out a little bit and he's looking for it around the car. And then he puts his head down to go find the joint. And you see this bus coming at the car and it destroys the car, kills him, and you like seen black. Now, my dad had just died right before we watched this. So that was trigger number one. And it made me a little anxious just watching that alone. And then the next scene is one of the boys, one of his sons, calling everybody and telling everybody that dad had just died. And one of the calls he makes is to the sister. And the sister is hanging out with her boyfriend. What's up, Eric? Who's a meth dealer. And they're smoking meth out of a meth pipe. And in a split second, I just got triggered about my dad dying. And I see this guy smoking meth out of a meth pipe, a dealer. I got triggered like I hadn't got triggered in years. I shut down the laptop that second. I was like, whoa, we're not watching that. And we talked about it for like an hour and a half after. So I have gotten triggered before, but it's been years since I've had a trigger around my drug use.
Amazing.
Good question for a lot of people to ask.
This conversation could go on forever. I think one thing that is really important, just to kind of round it out for Recovery Month, is that it's not always that obvious. Like, it's not always that obvious. The thing, if you are addicted or not, if your problem is a problem. Like someone actually asked on Instagram, like, how do you know? And like,
the border between like problematic use and addiction.
Yeah. How is it just like, I like to have socially like some weed versus like, I have a problem.
Sure.
Understand that. For us, sometimes it's not even a substance.
Yep.
It was sex. I found some inappropriate, we were engaged to be married, and I found some inappropriate sexting after we had already had a history of you cheating on me. You came to me and told the truth, but we broke up for a while. We got back together under the assumption and the intention that we were going to get engaged, get married, have babies, live happily ever after.
Sure.
And as we're engaged, you're acting out in a different way instead of using a substance.
Well,
now,
we found out actually in a bunch of different ways, right?
in a bunch of different ways. Yeah.
So the Ashley Madison stuff,
Online.
the sexting, the online chats with people.
It was a
bunch of
way
different ways.
to escape. So
Porn.
you were using sex, not even in person this time, because you're like, oh, your brain made the connection of like, I'll get in trouble and lose Sophie if I act out with a human being in the flesh. So instead, it became digital.
Yep.
And this is something that's new for our generation because this was never an issue before. There was no way through technology to have sex with someone. And now there is.
Sure.
Or to watch people having this, whatever. And this was a hard, boundary for someone, like for an engaged couple. I was under the understanding that was not appropriate. That was not allowed. We never necessarily had that conversation, but you knew that also wasn't allowed. So I found all of these things. And if you go back to our Going Deep episode, Our Story, you'll hear the entire story about the sex addiction, the cheating, everything. But this was a new manifestation for your addictions. This was like a new avenue. No,
it wasn't new.
No,
it was just there the whole time.
It was there the
I
whole
never
time.
knew to look
Right.
at it as an addiction.
Okay.
I've been watching porn since I was 11, pretty much daily. Yeah, no, it wasn't new. That was the problem, is I didn't even know to identify it. That there's so many people who deal with the drug stuff and then don't recognize that the sex is just right there behind it. I think what you said initially is really important, though. It's hard sometimes to know by yourself if this is an issue or not.
Sure.
That's why I do what I do.
And that's why you need to have a support system
Yeah.
around you that keeps you accountable. No matter what, like I don't have an addiction necessarily, but I have people in my life that keep me accountable to call me on my shit when I'm not acting in integrity, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Whether I like smoked too much weed or I was an asshole to you or whatever it is.
Sure.
I want people in my life to be like, should you really have that second cocktail? It's a Tuesday, and like whatever it is.
Right.
And for you, I found this stuff and you knew, you recognized it. He got down on his knees and he said, I recognize this behavior. There's meetings I can go to for this. They're 12-step meetings. It's a lot like if you were an alcoholic. You explained it to me.
Right.
And you started going to these meetings.
Right.
And it was just another layer of the onion of your recovery. Right?
Yeah, recovery's ongoing. It doesn't end. Just like self-improvement, hopefully in life, doesn't end.
Right.
My point about everything that I do now is you don't have to wait for things to get bad to get started. That's the reason I do what I do now, is for just the price of a cup of coffee a day, you can join a program online. You don't have to leave work. You don't have to pay $20,000. You don't have to go tell a bunch of people that you have a problem. You do it from your phone or from your laptop. You go online, you join a group of people who will support you through this.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how your specific program works? Because we've never talked about that. Can you tell us a little bit more? I know you have the groups once a week that you log into and you are yourself lead those. Can you tell us more about what they're going to do?
Yeah. So the Ignited Hero program has essentially 3 or 4 components to it. And one of them is the work that I would do with clients. And what that means is literally I talk to you like I would talk to a client. There's a lot more slides and educational component parts to that. But I talk to you conversationally through videos that have been recorded. And you get to watch those whenever you want to. You can log in at 2:00 in the morning because you're not sleeping and you can get help in that moment, which is impossible in any other setup, right? Like in any other setup, you got to make an appointment with your therapist. And even if they can't see you tomorrow, you now got to wait till tomorrow. So here you can log on and have that any time of the day. You log in and you have that information. Then you get the support. So the support with us comes in a few different flavors. First of all, there's the other people who participate, and they're in a private group that only you get to share. And again, they're all over the world. So you get that whenever you want. You get to tell them about your wins, your difficulties, whatever that is, and they support you through it. But then there's also your own accountability coach that we get you, which is a person who contacts you as soon as you sign up And then you get an appointment with them, and they're there with you every week to help make sure that you walk along the path.
Yep.
They call you, they ask you if what you got done this week, what needs to get done. They support you, hold your hand if there's any problems. And then on top of that, we run groups. Just like I used to run groups in the rehab, we now have 2 groups every week. And those groups run, and you get to tune in from anywhere, on your phone, on your laptop, on your desktop, on your tablet, whatever, and ask specific questions, share what's going on with you, get in-person support, video chat or no video, whatever you want. And then on top of that, you get email support. So these are like 4 different ways where I try to walk you through anything that you would need to get help. And just so it's clear, we have everything from people who drink 3 glasses of wine a night and they really have been trying to cut down for a long time and it hasn't worked, all the way to hardcore injecting heroin addicts. It's the entire range, because again, the thing you do is not the point. The point is, what are you using it for? And if we can get behind that, if we can understand that layer and keep digging in more deeply for you, then you will get the support. And so by reaching you in 4 different ways, anytime you want it, right? So you don't have to go to a meeting. You don't have to drive. You don't have to spend the money.
You could be in your pajamas at home. You can wake up when you want to and do it when you're inspired to, instead
or lunch. People do it during their lunch break and at work. So it's been running for 2 years. We've had a couple of 100 people run through it already, and they love it. And if you want, there are testimonials online from people who've done it. It's just magic. It's magic to be able to do it.
You would hop on a call, or Maddie would hop on a call with someone 100%. if you're really serious about it and have some questions.
Or if you have family members who are serious about it. That's a lot of times how we get found, right?
Yeah.
You think to yourself, oh my God, we don't have $30,000 to send this person to rehab. Well, maybe you don't have to.
And that's the point about this month, is opening your eyes and ears and hearts to different ways to heal. Everyone each week, all 3 weeks so far, has shared a different way that they recovered. So whether it's through AA and yoga, or whether it's through something like a D's course, which is totally cutting edge and brings in all of these amazing concepts and ways of healing that are not just the cookie cutter way. Yep. There's a way for you, and we are all here to help with that.
I think here's the thing that is important for everybody to hear right now, and it's this. I have my recovery story, and it's powerful, and it's amazing, and I love it, right? But I've now seen thousands of others. And unlike everybody else out there, I don't assume that your story needs to look, sound, or feel like mine or like the others I've seen before. And so what I'm really good at doing, and that's why the course works so well for people literally say to me, there's no way that just watching what you do online can help me. And I go, well, that's your belief.
Yeah.
It's already helped hundreds of people, so that's just not true.
Yeah.
And what you need, and what we're able to provide at Ignited, is we're able to provide you a safe environment so you can feel easier being transparent and honest than you ever have before. And then we help guide you and support you as you get to this next phase of life. Think about that call that I had with my dad. I didn't have anybody hold my hand and go, hey, here's what you need to do right now. You got to call your dad and you got to tell him what happened. There was no
you had to get to that point on your own.
On my own. Yeah. And I get people there now all the time through the work that we do.
However, a huge factor that got you through all of that was a support system. And you can be that support system. And you can have this online community that you show up for every day and will be there to support you. And that is a huge factor in it. It's not the only factor. You have to have a willingness and an eagerness to get clean, to get sober, to have this idea of having a different life. But then also you need a support system.
But the support is important. And the Ignited family is amazing. Our Ignited heroes are magic. I'm amazed by them every week.
And it's empowering because you're teaching them about the brain. You're teaching them about their bodies in a different way.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. So thank you for all the work you do and for how much you inspire all of us in this community. You inspire me every single day.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be doing it till the day I die.
Literally. From the grave. Like from the grave. He'll be like, let me help that person.
And this is coming out, I think, before the absolute end of September. So just remember that we actually have 10 scholarships. We'll have the link below to the intro version of that program I just talked about. Love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.
Part of our journey. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.